To this story now, President Cyril Ramaphosa will face MPs today. He's expected to answer a number of questions, including the theft at his Phala farm. The president has been mostly mum on the incident that happened 2 years ago. He's declined to answer questions, asking to rather let investigations unfold. Ramaphosa will also discuss the issue of illegal foreigners as well as GBV. Now, joining us to preview the president's visit to Parliament is Accountability Now's Paul Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman, good morning and thank you as always for joining us. Now, broadly speaking, it seems like we're slowly entering that era or age of accountability. I mean, citizens are expecting the president today to answer or share more details around Phala. Brian Molefe has joined the Transnet and Trillion corruption matter yesterday. The KZN DG in the Premier's office was also arrested yesterday. What do you make of all these developments currently in the country insofar as accountability is concerned?
Good morning, Mfundo, and good morning to your viewers as well. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not as impressed as some of the commentariat is by the arrests in relation to the Transnet state capture corruption, and I'm certainly not impressed with the president's attitude in relation to taking the public of South Africa into his confidence in relation to what happened at Phala when money in US dollars was stolen. The problem with the prosecution side of things is that it seems that the National Prosecuting Authority is not actually ready with its case. It hasn't prepared or finalized its charge sheet. It hasn't decided who to add to the throng in the dock, and it hasn't yet decided that its investigation of the matter is complete. These sorts of problems are going to manifest themselves until the Criminal Justice Administration is radically reformed and the prosecution and investigation of serious corruption is dealt with by one independent entity that is able to effectively and efficiently deal with corruption in the country. As far as question time in Parliament is concerned, which is the second part of your question, that idea of the president answering questions is a fabulous accountability mechanism if the right questions are asked and the right answers are given. You can take poison right now that the president just won't answer the questions around Phala. He will say that there is a process, and he won't give any detail.
No, speaking on that, that's what I actually wanted to get to. But the phrasing of the question itself, because if we look at today's question paper, ATM's Vuyo Zungula asked the president whether he has considered it prudent to take the nation into his confidence on allegations surrounding the robbery at his farm. I mean, that phrasing alone says you're giving him an option to tell you if he finds it prudent or not. So he could easily then be able to say, no, at this point I've subjected myself to 2 other processes. I'm in a process with the public protector and the South African police. So do you not think it perhaps also starts with how you phrase your question? Then you can expect some sort of an answer of substance.
I don't expect an answer of substance. I'll be very surprised if the president elects to actually take the public of South Africa into his confidence. And in fact, what he is doing is counterproductive, because if he were to take the public into his confidence, if he were to explain that he had the necessary paperwork, the permit from the state vet, the permission from the exchange control authorities, the VAT return and the income tax return in respect of the transaction underlying the presence of so many dollars in his farmhouse at Phala, he would be far further down the road towards accountability than he is at present. Instead, he has chosen to duck and dive and avoid answering very simple questions about the story. I see on your screen at the moment that you're flashing up cattle. Well, there's another version that this was actually pardon my dogs, they're looking after the security downstairs. The Pala Pala burglary is not a matter that can simply be swept under the carpet. It's already under the surveillance of the public protector, who looks after the ethics of our executive, and, as you've said, under the under the investigation by the police. So I'm afraid that we're not going to get answers on Pala Pala.
Mm-hmm. But then there is this great divide right now. There are those of the belief that he, as a citizen of the country, equally deserves to be protected by the Constitution insofar as being embroiled in any legal matter, that if he chooses to be silent on the matter, perhaps not implicate himself, or only answer in a particular forum where he feels he has no other reason but to do so. What do you make of those that are of that view, that he should enjoy the same rights, versus those that say, no, this is the first citizen of the country, he should be held to a higher standard beyond that process unfolding in our courts? There should be a process where he does take the nation into his confidence. There is that divide. What do you make of just that whole debate?
That debate is resolved by regard to Section 1 of the Constitution, which requires that a system of governance be put in place that is open, accountable, and responsive. Now, if President Ramaphosa had been open, accountable, and responsive in relation to the burglary at Pala Pala, you and I would not be having this conversation. The idea that he is entitled to the presumption of innocence and is entitled to hold his peace applies to an accused in a pending criminal matter. There is no pending criminal matter, and he has not been accused of anything other than what is in the complaint by Arthur Fraser, and one can certainly speculate that Arthur Fraser was simply doing a maneuver in order to get himself a free pass.
But his legal counsel would beg to differ, Mr. Hoffman. His legal counsel may beg to differ that, yes, perhaps there are no criminal proceedings per se right now, but Arthur Fraser did submit information to the police. They are perhaps investigating that matter. They have stated on numerous occasions that the IPID is even investigating the extent to which police officers were involved. So his legal counsel could easily say, I mean, here we could see a situation where you are possibly criminally charged. So would they not be, or would he not deserve to enjoy the right to say, I would love to keep my peace for now, or only answer in a forum that I have been advised to answer in, and that is the advice given to him by his lawyers?
The right to remain silent is given to accused persons by the Section 35 of the Bill of Rights. The duty to govern openly, accountably, and responsibly is a duty which applies to the president and to anybody else in a position in governance. There is no charge against the president. He is not an accused person, and he ought to be answering the questions, but chooses not to on the flimsiest of pretexts.
Mm-hmm. And then another matter that he expected to be quizzed on is illegal foreign nationals in the country. It has divided South Africans. You know, the incident that happened with the MEC in Limpopo continues to divide South Africans. There are those that supported, while others have honestly condemned the incident in its entirety and just the conduct of the MEC. Do you think that government needs to start taking responsibility, even from a diplomatic on a diplomatic perspective here, that perhaps they have failed to a certain extent to engage their counterparts in Zimbabwe and other countries on the continent about this matter of migration, particularly in the SADC region?
Well, I think that you will find, if you look back at the quiet diplomacy that permitted Robert Mugabe to steal an election in Zimbabwe, that South Africa is the author of its own misfortune, in that Zimbabweans are fleeing from Zimbabwe, or economically migrating from Zimbabwe into South Africa. the bottom line in relation to the incident in Limpopo is that the state is obliged to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the right to access to health care of all people in South Africa, whether they are citizens or foreigners, illegally or legally present in the country. And the MEC is way out of line and really behaving as a populist and getting ready for an election rather than fulfilling her functions as the MEC. And I'm pleased to see that a lot of people, both inside and outside of politics, are highly critical of what she has done, because essentially she's not only in breach of a Hippocratic oath, she's in breach of her oath of office as a functionary in the South African state who is obliged to uphold human rights.
And has possibly exposed a number of foreign nationals in the country to abuse, because we're now seeing their protests at hospitals. So it's honestly very unfortunate. But then another matter, just in closing, the Hawks executing a search and seizure operation at the homes of those 3 former Office of the Chief Justice officials. I mean, that was another big one last week. It relates to that IT tender. I mean, this was a clear case of Javelin here. Insofar as accountability is concerned, are we seeing a shift where we're seeing the Hawks showing a greater appetite to prosecute or hold accountable those even in the so-called white-collar crime? Because Javelin is so complicated. It's not a situation where there was a bombing of an ATM where you can literally see the damage and then you can hold certain people accountable, arrest them and process them through the law. This is a matter that requires a lot of detail and actually following the paper trail.
Absolutely, and I think that it's commendable that the Hawks have been able to act fairly rapidly in the matter. It's reprehensible that staff in the Office of the Chief Justice, of all places, should see fit to abuse the system in the way that they have. But unfortunately, the Hawks are only as good as the structure and the operational environment in which they work. They are part of the South African police. They answer to the Minister of Police, who ought not to be the Minister of anything, because he has been found, when he was fired as the Commissioner of Police in an earlier career of his, to be dishonest and incompetent. He ought to be facing charges in relation to what he did with those leases for police headquarters at the time of the Soccer World Cup back in 2010. So really, the working environment of the Hawks is not one of adequate independence, and they are not properly set up. They're not able to operate in a way that the Constitution requires, that as interpreted by the Constitutional Court in the Glenister litigation. And until we get back to a Scorpion-like entity that does have secure tenure of office, that was the Achilles heel of the Scorpions. It was too easy to close them down. So if we house our anti-corruption machinery of state in relation to serious corruption in Chapter 9, reporting line to Parliament, not to the Minister of Police or in fact to any minister, we will stand a better chance of seeing success against serious corruption rather than the delays and the inertia that is affecting the system at the moment.
Mr. Hoffman, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for that. That's Accountability Now's advocate Paul Hoffman.